Hi, I'm Erica Cristobal. I'm a writer and arts educator and programmer based in Toronto.
Hello, I'm Lingxiang Wu. I'm a Chinese queer visual artist currently based in Toronto.
Hi, I'm Kristi Poole-Adler. I'm an interdisciplinary artist based in Toronto.
We are going to talk about our research project called The Screen, Intimacy, and the Attention Economy. Are We Ever Together? The first thing we're going to do is talk about what inspired this project and our research questions. We bring together shared curiosities and concerns related to relationship building and the attention economy and how this is experienced through the screen. To follow, we will provide a brief overview of the key texts and theories that guided our research. We draw from cultural and communication studies, media theory, and psychology to examine our relationships with our screen. Ling and Kristi will then walk us through their art-based research to examine the role of the screen and its influence in the way we connect and relate to one another. Our conclusion brings together our readings and the art processes of Ling and Kristi to think about how we can bring elements of care in and out of our digital interactions. Despite our creative backgrounds being so diverse from each other as curators, writers, and artists, we realized how intertwined our ideas of care and intimacy were to each other. During the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw how care and intimacy unfolded at the face of quarantine and social distancing. We began to use digital devices and services like Zoom and FaceTime more frequently as a means to stay connected with friends and family, as well as maintain relationships with our communities by showcasing our work online. At the same time, we experienced what many other people might have as well, and that was feelings of anxiety, loneliness, and overwhelmed from the information overload. There was something untruthful about the promise of the screen and its capacity to connect us, because over time, the connection felt short-lived. Something else was at play with our encounters with the screen that we noticed to drive us apart. This made us question if these feelings were related to our digital experience through the screen and question how might our interactions and ideas of intimacy and care translate from in-person to online. As we started to explore our relationships with the screen, from using it as a mode for communication and connection, a platform for information sharing and gathering, or a space for consumption and content, we ask the following questions. How do we engage with the screen of digital devices? Does it function as another apparatus for capitalism? And can the screen genuinely bring people together in a meaningful way as a site for togetherness and discourse? The main theorists grounding this research include philosopher and essayist Yves Sitton. Through his articulation around the attention economy, we situate a critical research on screen and care with the complex operation of attention under neoliberal capitalism. Cultural theorist Byung-Chul Han, with his concept of the aesthetic of the smooth, we position the contemporary obsession on fast communication and visibility as the main obstacles for establishing relationships of care. With social psychologist Shoshana Zuboff, we further understand the mindset and gimmick behind the tools and software we use from everyday life, from the economic and business perspective rather than personal ones. And lastly, with neuroscientists and psychologists Amir Levine and Rachel Heller, we can analyze how personal attachment styles affect the way we behave in romantic relationships and how the screen contributes to these relations. Our research also connects with theorists, writers, and artists, including Hito Steyerl, Legacy Russell, Michelle Drouin, and Mackenzie Wark to help us unpack our inquiries with the screen. Aside from theoretical research, we also use art-based research to further analyze how we develop relationships through the screen and what we can draw from them to build intimate and authentic connections. Using the artworks of Ling and Kristi, we saw through their labor-intensive practices and textual reflections that the screen offers an abundance of content that can be quickly absorbed, dismissed, and forgotten. Ling uses digital images captured from social media applications to examine the dynamic between performer on screen to consumer behind the screen, and how these two roles are interconnected through the screen and by the attention economy. Kristi creates text-based weavings, drawing from personal interactions using popular online dating applications. She explores identity, intimacy, vulnerability, shame, and connection within the romantic relationships. I'm going to pass it on to Ling now to give us an overview of his work.
Thank you, Erica. So my overall research investigates the image culture on social media to understand this generation's paradoxical urge to perform while feeling utterly exhausted through two ongoing projects, digital landfill and performative digital bodies. With digital landfill, I want to make sense of that suffocating feelings of being surrounded with images and information that almost made the digital space sometimes too violent and aggressive to be in, especially during the pandemic and quarantine, where we rely on the internet and digital service a lot more. That feeling become more intense than ever. So the project aimed to recreate other type of web experience that can be a strategic retreat from the hypervisibility and hyperactivity. While digital landfill circles around the need to play dead, performative digital bodies starts earlier this year, explore the other side of the spectrum. The project gathered images of body actively performing for the internet, absorbing the labor where we work and alter our bodies for likes and visibility, and how that optimization affects our relationship with one another. As TikTok, Twitch, OnlyFans quickly emerged over the past few years as popular outlet for daily entertainment, the image of bodies proliferate in digital space immensely. However, that repeated encounter do not seem to unite us together, only leaving us feeling more alone than ever. Therefore, the project reflects and reimagines the oddly erotic and voyeuristic relationship between images, producer, and consumers in digital space through various art mediums, including GIFs, experimental videos, collage, new media installations, and a film essay. So both projects are heavily tied to my research on social media around Yves Sitong's concept of attention ecology, which perfectly sums up this dysfunctional mode of labor we do to become visible online, resulting in a more and more extreme form of quote-unquote news and entertainment. Adapting that pornography aesthetic that German-Korean philosopher Byung-Chul Han described as the aesthetic of the smooth. The smoothness is like Jeff Koons' balloon doll, which only stimulates the desire to touch and consume, but has no inwardness hidden behind its smooth surface. Whatever we see is whatever it means, begging for seconds of attention, to like, to align, to share, to have opinion, and ultimately to buy. And the impact of the smoothness easily expands and transforms into gesture-like actions, things, or even artwork that often in a form of support or critique of certain issues simply by just performing it, like Maurizio Catalan's comedian. Maybe that desperate desire for visibility and the extreme thinking that we are willing to do whatever it takes to deliver the message is what made the digital space violent and aggressive. So while working on the project Digital Landfill, I constantly think about my own complicities with these three questions. How can we cope with the hypervisibility and hyperactivity while feeling completely exhausted? How do I, as an artist, comment on the issue of attention economic while my work demands attention of others too? How can we not contribute to the ongoing shitstorm simply by shouting into each other's mouth? While thinking about these questions, I began the process of digital landfill, spent a year to collect videos of me scrolling on Instagram. Then with those materials, I fragment them in Photoshop and After Effects, then export them back as images and video ready to be reused again. Using A-frame and HTML, I start piling these images and video into digital space. Through the project, I am questioning if the reconstruction of this soulless smooth image can also become and create some space that is oddly poetic and contemplative, a safe space that exists not for capitalist reason, but purely exists because it is, as a space where we visit and wonder mindlessly with others. Similar to Digital Landfill, I began the project Performative Digital Bodies earlier this year, where I collected around 400 short clips of bodies from TikTok. With the footage I got, I realized these performative digital bodies have no soul nor flesh, but they are expressive bodies, always ready to get our attention. Like Hito Steiro's description of span, something lacking in substance, an uncanny mix between the natural and synthetic. It is both organic and deeply inauthentic, a product from constant dissecting our bodies with labels and hashtags to find a niche, the specific characters we want to perform to appeal to certain audience. Like an ultimate match of likable qualities, niche, or gimmick only result in mediocrity, a reduction form of the cell that is made to produce and consume as much as possible and incapable of bridging cares with others. So with that in mind, I began my experimentation with these visuals of bodies. So the first work I did is a series of GIFs that use video of body that are performing the same act, walking, jumping, bouncing, etc. The work depicts the urge to perform and the compulsion to see the new, but eventually only produce variation of the same on social media. They lure us with glamour, vitality, and positivity like old-time propaganda or ads for Viagra or penis enlargement. Another experiment I did is a series of animated collage that utilize image and video of social media thirst trap, hoping to reimagine that ever more sexual and provocative throbbing atmosphere of TikTok into something contemplative and uncanny. Both experiments inform the piece I'm currently doing during the ACC residency in South Korea, which is titled FFF, Follow for Follow, an experimental video projection where moving body clips multiply and reconfigure into kaleidoscope-like structure, smoothly transitioning from one another. Visualizing that seemingly harmonious yet visual attention economy as a never-ending piece of machinery made of everlasting body movements. I hope the experience of viewing will be somewhat calming and mesmerizing, but also giving a sense of loneliness to make the moments of self-reflection happen. Through self-reflection, the hybridization of spank may also be used to enrich our mental strengths and adapt to the ever more technology-advanced society. Becoming a glitch body, as American curator and writer Legacy Russell articulate, that defies the hierarchies and strata of logic, is proudly nonsensical and therefore perfectly nonsense. Through the art practice, I hope to reimagine the hybridization of spans as more critical and thought-provoking beings, liberating those performative digital bodies from the logical labels, social norms, and excitingly experimenting with who we can become. Therefore, from observing the bodies actively performing for the internet on social media, we can see that digital screens has become a site that holds the operation of visibility and performativity, where we modify our bodies' behaviors in various ways along the aesthetic of the smooth in response to the attention economy. So what about other places on screen that we inhabit through different apps? I imagine the operation of visibility and performativity intensified from social media to dating app, as the supposed emotional input changed from likes to love. Much like the aesthetic of the smooth on social media outlets, the bio on dating apps becomes a space to present whatever version of yourself you think will grab the attention of your viewers, long enough to make them want you. Kristi's art practice look at the idea of the online dating persona through physical materials as a way to critique the shallowness and impersonal aspects to finding a connection online. I will pass to Kristi.
Thank you, Ling. Dating applications enforce a practice of judgment, shallowness, and seem to attract people like myself who avoid actual intimacy because we can easily conceal our true selves, presenting the persona we wish to share. My work questions what it means to date in a digital age and how personal attachment styles affect the way we behave. Embedding narrative into cloth has become a means for investigation in my practice as I explore questions such as, do we need physical touch to feel connected to one another? What do we lose or gain from virtual communication? I create text-based fiber works that draw from personal interactions using popular online dating applications such as Hinge, Tinder, Bumble, exploring identity, intimacy, vulnerability, shame, and connection within these romantic relationships. Growing up in a household lacking emotional security and a sense of belonging, I was conditioned to believe that vulnerability meant weakness. I viewed love and intimacy as equivalent to a loss of independence and avoided attachment. In Out of Touch, How to Survive an Intimacy Famine, Michelle Jurin explains, over the past decade, as our reliance on technology to forge and maintain social relationships has grown, we are getting sadder. Jurin explains that when we receive actual human touch, like a hug, we get a full hit of oxytocin, the love hormone, but when we communicate digitally, we're only getting microdoses of dopamine, the reward hormone, therefore leaving us empty and craving more. Swiping through dating apps becomes highly addictive, yet doesn't actually provide you with any real sense of connection. Even though I know this, I'm still drawn to the screen, hoping to prove myself wrong and unable to put my phone down. During a residency at the Icelandic Textile Center in Blönduós, Iceland earlier this year, I created a series of weavings drawing from my experience using a dating app called Smitten, the most fun dating app. When setting up your profile, it takes you through a series of 125 questions, which are then turned into a guessing game when you're viewing other people's profiles. For example, does Berger hate dogs? Has Carl seen someone die? Are both of Marcus's parents alive? At first, I found this app overwhelming, but as I spent more time with it, I found that the blunt comedy of the questions acted as an icebreaker and led to some interesting conversations. Additionally, Smitten only allows you to communicate with people on the app for 1 week. After that, the match will expire, suggesting you to make other arrangements for communication and to connect deeper and get to know one another. Although I didn't actually meet anyone in person, I thought this was a step in the right direction to encourage people to use the apps as an initial step in making a connection, rather than waste people's time and drain their energy. In this work, I selected a part of a conversation I had where we were discussing one of the questions from the guessery, "Have you seen someone die?" I was being quite careless in the way of discussing this question because I found it quite humorous, but I actually found out that his mom had passed away from illness when he was quite young. This question led to us having a more meaningful conversation, and we continued to message each other every day for the first month I was in Iceland. I was hopeful we would actually meet in person, but like many interactions I've experienced online, it didn't lead anywhere. I chose to transfer the messages, including every typo, into a weaving using a jacquard TC2 loom. Revisiting the messages in a more tangible and in its own way intimate experience allowed me to slow down the conversation and deeply reflect what was being said, as opposed to the fleeting, careless, easily dismissive experience of chatting with someone online. The final work now serves as a personal archive and record of diverse characters and their vulnerability, blurring the boundaries of private and public. To create these weavings, I hand draw the text as well as recreate patterns by hand that are inspired by elements of my surroundings. For example, the funky wallpaper in the kitchen at the house I stayed at in Iceland, or patterns from my childhood home that I can recall from memory. These hand-drawn elements are then manipulated in Photoshop to create the file for the TC2 loom, where the actual weaving is done by hand. Working on the jacquard loom references the digital platform the work is conceptualized in, yet the work is created in a slow, meticulous, and careful manner, counteracting the overstimulating, overwhelming environment digital space can provide. I work back and forth between physical and digital materials and applications as a way to find balance and quiet moments of stillness. The screen is not a window that opens us to a sea of information, but more of a transportation belt that directs us to the people, products, companies, and events that need our attention. Therefore, it creates passivity in us when we exercise our attention and are easily manipulated by capitalistic activities online through the medium of the screen. What do we think the role of the screen is, and what do we want it to be? I echo the words of Sitan when he explains that he seeks to question, what can we do collectively about our individual attention, and how can we contribute individually to a redistribution of our collective attention? In other words, how do we decide who and what to devote our attention to, and how can we exercise more care in doing so? Through the use of handcrafts, I create a quiet, contemplative, meditative space where I break away from the screen in order to question its role in my relationships, life, and art practice.
Thanks, Kristi and Lang. What our textual and art-based research revealed to us was the need for sentiments of care. How can we bring elements of care from our physical interactions into our digital interactions? And how can we create safer and more intimate communities and relations online? Our key takeaways from analyzing the attention economy's influence on the screen and in our case studies using Ling and Kristi's work are to reject, to glitch, and to reconstruct our passivity with the screen, to prolong, to know, to build relationship through screens, for example, elongate time spent with certain things or people, and create space for care and substantial intimacy, and lastly, to listen, to understand, to reflect on the self as the screen turns black. We can do this by understanding the vast network of power operations and algorithms behind the screen and be the smart people who use the machine instead of being used by the smart machine. We can practice the art of listening and seek out ways to bring elements of care from the physical to digital world. Our next step in this research is to analyze both care theory and practice with the screen to build more meaningful connections online. That concludes our presentation of the screen, intimacy, and the attention economy. Are we ever together? Thank you.